Guys, and welcome back to another episode of Bird's Eye View, where we connect the past to the present in order to understand what is going on in the Black community and what makes the Black community unique. This is a very special episode of Bird's Eye View because I wanted to do a special episode because with everything going on with COVID-19, with the protests, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with George Floyd and everything that is going on, I felt like this is a needed episode to kind of help people to cope and help people to kind of release some aggression and some thoughts and ideas that we all have. I know for myself that I have been trying to deal with all of this, and I've had my good days and my bad days, but I wanted to do this episode. So here with me today, I actually have my boyfriend, Will, who's wearing the Black America flag mask. And with us also is his brother, Brian, who's also one half of a podcast called On the Ride Up. So, hi, guys.
Hey, what's going on? Hey,
everything is good, yes. So, I wanted to first do kind of a check-in with both you, Brian, and Will, because I know you've been seeing all the protests across all of the 50 states and 18 countries. People have been protesting about George Floyd and all of these other people that have been, victimized by police brutality. So I want to get kind of your thoughts on, like, how are you guys doing mentally? How are you coping with this? Like, what are your thoughts?
It depends. Like, this morning I watched Dave Chappelle's special 846 and made me angry again. Like, not angry again, because I'm all underlying. There's always this. You're always thinking about what's going to happen. Like, what's next? Is this going to be the one that changes things, or that gives us some more meaningful change, and not this incremental, slow-footed, barely anything there change? And that kind of makes me angry too. So it's kind of like the James Baldwin quote. I'm going to paraphrase. Is being a conscious Black man in America is a constant state of rage. So it's kind of like underlying, and you can combine that with the MCU with I'm always angry with Bruce Banner. It's all like it's always there. It's always at some point there. We just a new viral video just exposes it to a little, more people. And so for whatever reason, this galvanized, for a few reasons, this galvanized more white people, more just different, more of a diverse crowd to join in. And that's positive, and hopefully we can steer that into a direction where more positive change happens than, what's been the status quo.
Yeah, I just want to, I agree with Brian that it's kind of a thing that's always constant on your mind. And you just learn to compartmentalize the what's happening around you. There's only way to really function, because if you don't compartmentalize it, you kind of end up you're always going to be angry or down or something. So I am happy on one hand to see so many people actually rally around it, to the point where it seems on some level different than what it has been, but it always weighs on you, especially being a Black man and feeling like you're one of the targets.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that you put it on different boxes and stuff. But I think one thing that is where people are more so now paying attention is because, one, we have the time. Like, with COVID-19 happening, things are shut down. I know the country is starting to open back up, but there are a lot of places where we are still shut down. And so you can't go to the movies, you can't go to the malls, you can't really do anything to kind of take your mind off of what is happening. So you have no choice to kind of just sit at home and scroll through the timeline and see what's going on and deal with what is happening. Because like we all know that this is nothing new. Like people have been getting killed like all the time, but now we're where, you know, the country is shut down and we have no choice but to kind of deal with it head on. Because even with myself, I was kind of like the other day, I was like, why is this now just really, really hitting me? And I think it was because I actually have the time to sit down and really think about what is going on and trying to figure out like, well, what can I do to make a difference? Like, how can I, you know, show my support for my fellow brothers and sisters and deal with my feelings, but at the same time realizing that we're still in a pandemic and not wanting to expose myself to the virus. Because to be honest with you, I haven't gone out and protested, and I don't plan on going out and protesting because of the pandemic. So like, have you guys gone out and protested? If so, like, what was it like? If not, you know, tell me your thoughts or feelings even behind doing that or not doing that.
I have not this time. Like in 2012, we were sad and angry with Trayvon. In 2014, we were sad and angry with Mike Brown, and then Philando, and then like John Crawford, and then so it's kind of like I'm at a point where I don't like the emphasis on togetherness with kneeling down with police. I'm not kneeling down with no police. I'm not I'm not with that. I want action. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's healthy for me to be out, you know, in a place where they're going to, you know, spray tear gas at you and rubber bullets, because I want that action. That's the you know what I mean? So I'm just not, if I'm not like aligned with you as far as nonviolence is cool. Nonviolence is cool. Nonviolent protest is cool. It's done a lot of good. It passed the Civil Rights Act. I understand that, but there's still people talking about this isn't systemic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, like, come on. I don't want to argue with nobody. I'm not arguing with nobody no more. It's not systemic. Yeah. If you think it's not systemic, cool. Get out the way. Move around.
Right.
I haven't done it. My Felicia was out there in Arlington, and it looked beautiful. It looked like, you know, what needs to happen. But
my daughter has done it. I have not yet. And I would have went there with her to do it with her if I was available. I was doing something else at that moment, but during the time frame that it was going on, I support the people who protest. I do feel like a little bit like Brian. I think my mental, where I am mentally, the walking around around people who I think might be my enemies, not the protesters of themselves. I'm talking about the people who come against the protesters. Makes you want to do something that isn't going to necessarily be productive. So
yeah, and I mean, I can understand that, because I know a lot of us are just tired. Like we're tired. We're tired as a people, because we feel like things are not going to change. Or like for me, because of the pandemic, but then two, because of, you know, safety and everything. But for me, I feel like I can do more good by using my platform, using my business. I've been trying to blog more. I've been trying to, you know, educate people about, you know, racism and, you know, white privilege and everything that to the reason why people are protesting. Because yes, it is more than George Floyd and, you know, Breonna Taylor and everybody that has been killed, but this has been a systemic problem. It's rooted into the government, is rooted into history, is rooted into slavery when the first slaves were brought over here in 1619. Like it's bigger than that. And I think now, because the country is forced to stop we're forced to stop. So now people are actually listening. Well, some people, but majority of people are actually listening, because I mean, and I've had like my white friends that call me. One of my best friends who's white, we end up having like a 2.5 hour conversation about just different things. And at the end of the day, she was letting me know that, you know, that I have her support. I've had some of my supervisors that called me to make sure that I was okay. And, you know, it is one of those things where also on social media, there was something that I posted about white privilege, and people were coming after me about that. So it's to a point where, yes, I want to educate people, but there are also people out there that don't want to listen, but I can't let the few do that and stop me. So, I mean, that's how I decide to, in my protests, it's, you know, buying Black, looking for Black businesses to support. So, I mean, I did a post not too long ago about all these Black businesses. I bought some toothbrushes, toilet paper, toothpaste, all this stuff from all Black businesses, because I want to show my support and solidarity with my brothers and my sister. And helping people to understand that, why is it important to, you know, support the Black businesses? Why is it important for, if you choose so, to go protest and to speak out against racism, and to speak out, and how can you use your white privilege? Because that's almost a superpower, is white privilege. And time again, white privilege shows its head. And it's interesting, because when I see the news, or I see certain posts, or read certain comments, I'm thinking to myself, and that is white privilege. Because something simple as, I think the other day I saw a post that somebody was upset because Etsy had made like a whole Black, like support Black, small Black business page. Like they made a whole page for Etsy. And somebody was upset about that because they felt like it was honing in on their small business, because this is a time where, for COVID, all small businesses are hurting, and, you know, this, that, the other, why do you have to do this right now? And I'm like, okay, so that is your white privilege coming through. If you have to figure out, if you're worried about them making a page about Black businesses, honing in on your business, that's all you care about, then you're not getting it. You don't see the bigger picture. But so your white privilege is saying, oh, I'm worried about my small business, which is understandable. But at the same time, it's like, do you understand why Etsy made a whole page for Black-owned businesses? Do you understand why they did that? It wasn't because they were trying to rain on your parade. That wasn't it at all. And then it was funny, because I went on Etsy's page where they made that announcement, and you should have seen some of the comments. I mean, they were calling Etsy racist by making this page and trying to discriminate. They were saying, oh, now you discriminate against white people. And I was like, what? And so, you know, I was just like, it was crazy.
They are miseducated, just as we're miseducated. And it's a shame. But at this point, my gift isn't in teaching, because I don't have the patience. Everything is out there for you.
Yeah.
Go read the New Jim Crow. Go read. Go read.
Yeah, and that's my point exactly. Like, it is out there, but sometimes people don't want to. And we talk about this all the time, what it means to be ignorant. Being ignorant means that you just don't know. There are things that I don't know. There are things that white people don't know. There are things that everybody don't know. But I guess what makes me upset, and those times that people would come against me when I'm talking about like white privilege, is that they associate white privilege with white supremacy. Those are two totally different things.
And affluence.
Yeah, and
the things are correlated, but the problem is, which I guess they're not seeing, is but just because of a correlation doesn't mean you as an individual are racist. So when you call somebody or let somebody know that they have white privilege, that they have an issue because they would think that I'm specifically saying you're racist.
And that's not the case.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying white supremacy causes and allows for your white privilege.
So yes, exactly. So my podcast is generally a sports podcast, and one thing that's sitting right in front of our faces is Kyle Shanahan. They just lost the Super Bowl, but Super Bowl attending coach, his father was Mike Shanahan, and he got into his position because he had his father. There was nepotism, but and that instills it pushes a black candidate out. And it's a 70% lead, a black league. So, and then he had his quote was, I don't know why, it was a quote that says, I don't understand why this is happening or whatever. But his job is part of the problem, regardless of if he's qualified or not. That's the system. The system is already perpetuated. It's already in motion. He doesn't have to be racist. The system's in motion already. And it was made by racists. This is by design. So it's kind of like you don't have to do nothing. All you have to do is it's set on that hill. It's rolling down. The snowball's rolling down. It's happening. So you can't just not be racist at that point. You have to tear down your white privilege. You have to then tear and be what they call anti. It's getting trendy now.
Anti-racist.
And they say anti-racist, but that's what you have to be. You can't just run around and say, "Oh yeah, I love everybody. I don't see color." That's not how it works. No, that's not gonna do it. That's not how black people in this country are gonna get equity.
And that's the problem I was just gonna say that's the problem with when people say all lives matter. Yes, you can be inclusive. You can say all lives matter, but all lives matter. That's a false statement because you got some people out there that can't say that Black lives matter. You can't say all lives matter if Black lives don't matter to you. So you need to, and I understand why people are trying, some people, they say that all lives matter because they honestly believe that everyone's life should matter. But when you say all lives matter, it dilutes what the Black Lives Matter movement is all about. Because you literally have people out there that want to gun us down and they are getting away with it. So they're going to keep doing it until the system changes, where you're not going to get a slap on the wrist or get paid administrative leave while they do their little investigation. You have the video. The man's knee was in the man put his knee in his neck. You can't deny that. So
and then
turn around and find them not guilty. So it's not guilty of what? The man is dead. Somebody killed him. He's dead. How did he die?
I get that, and that's all true. I guess there's some type of contingent that thinks all lives matter means it's inclusive somehow. But my thing is, it's been explained 100,000 times. It can be simplified just as much. If we're walking for leukemia, does that mean we disrespecting brain cancer or breast cancer?
Right.
That does I've seen that 1,000,000 times, explained 1,000,000 times, and I just don't understand how you're missing that. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that to me, you being oblivious to me at this point is you being complicit. That's where I'm at.
And for a lot of people I think that's the case. They're oblivious, or they're complicit, or there's some combination of something that's going on in their mind where they don't want to be a part of what's happening. So this is how they can separate themselves from it, it doesn't make any sense.
And that is, again, because it's not affecting them. But again, that it all ties back to white privilege, because you have the privilege to want to put that out of your mind. We don't have that privilege. We can't say, oh, okay, well, if we don't talk about it, then we don't have to worry about it. If we move to this neighborhood where there's not a lot of Black people, then we don't have to worry about that. If we do this or that, the other, then we don't have to worry about it. We don't have that luxury. And so when people want to know, well, how can I use my white privilege for good? How can I use this superpower? Basically, you use it to be anti-racist, which means instead of you saying, oh, I'm an inclusive person, it means when you see somebody saying something derogatory against people, Black people or people of color, when you see something that's not right going down, then you speak up and say something about it. You just don't pretend you don't hear or see it.
And boycott companies that aren't on code. Tucker Carlson's losing sponsors right now. The only way that can happen is if white people stop. Like we're not, we don't have, like we can go back and forth about the buying power of the black people in this country, but at the same time we don't have that. That's the cash that's not there. Like, the ready, steady cash is not there. Is not, the numbers aren't going to be there. Like they can push past this. For whatever reason, it seems like a lot of because of the attention of that George Floyd's case has gotten, brands and companies are starting to do what Etsy is doing. Like everybody's doing it, and it's interesting. I don't quite fully, like we've noticed it for years since Mike Brown, but this for whatever reason in 2020 changed something, but I don't know I can't research. I don't know what changed other than the pandemic and people are sitting down and saying, hey, this is crazy. And this is the only thing they can do is get out on the streets. So it kind of like, it woke white people up to, a lot more white people up to do something that was more than, than usual. So I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think not only with the pandemic, but I think it's because people are truly just fed up. Like we are just done. And so it's to the point where we need things to change. And I think too, part of it is social media now. Like social media is not what it used to be even 10 years ago. So with cell phone cameras, I mean, there are videos after videos of police brutality and showing what is actually going on. And people can't hide anymore. And then even with the protests, I think it's great to protest, but I want to make sure that we don't lose the momentum even when the country starts to open back up. Because I mean, like even here in Maryland, next Friday, the gyms are back open, the malls are back open. So things are starting to get back to normal. And I think even the movie theaters are opening back up next Friday as well. So people are going to go out and go about their lives as much as possible. But what I don't want to happen is we lose momentum because now we have stuff to do. Right. Like and that's part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because at least on my platform, I can keep doing what I'm doing. Like I'm not, like you can't go out and protest every single day because you got to make a living, you got to pay bills. But there are other things that you can do beyond protesting, which one of those things is to educate yourself. And so people want to make sure that they are, if they want to continue to, if you want to continue to fight, you have to educate yourself.
Absolutely.
And because I know we were having this conversation the other day about when you're in, elementary school, middle school, high school, like it's a shame that what we get for Black history, where Black history makes up a lot of American history, we're not taught that in school. Like I didn't have a true Black history class until I got to college. And even then that was an elective. So for a lot of people, you'll be surprised of like when I'm posting things and when I'm doing my blog and saying certain things, you would be so surprised when people like comment and say, oh, I had no idea this happened. I didn't know this was going on. I didn't know this happened in our history. It did. And that's because they weren't taught this. Like one of the things that got a lot of traction on my social media was I had shared a picture about Black women and when it comes to the medical field. And I was like, you do realize that the father of gynecology, who we deem as the father of gynecology, the only way he was able to even become that was because he experimented on Black women as if we were just, rats. And so, because part of what he said was, because Black women, we don't feel that sort of pain. So basically, we weren't even treated as humans. So that's why he literally experimented on Black women to become the father of gynecology and what we know about gynecology today. And so it's things like that people don't realize, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is atrocity. This is crazy. And I'm just like, it's true. It's what happened. It's facts. And it's like, people don't want to believe that this happened in the great country of America, but it did. And so, and I think a little bit, I think part of it is because of propaganda, because we want to teach, just like any other country, you want to teach, the young people that this is a great nation, you should be patriotic, you should be proud of your country. But should we really be proud of this country and its history? When you really look back at the American history, what can we really be proud of?
I think, I think that's part of the miseducation, the steep, especially in white America, middle America, where it's this American exceptionalism that runs through everyone's brains. It's a lot of bit of, to me, propaganda and brainwashing. We're not the best country. We're not a moral compass. Those are fallacies. Those aren't real. You can't. So that's one thing. So we look at ourselves as some type of, look at us as American citizens. We look at ourselves as some type of moral compass, just this beacon for democracy. Our country isn't a beacon for democracy, especially not in 2020, for who we have in office, and who's the leader of the Senate at this point. And it's not. It's always been this way, but nobody really wants to deal and tackle these issues and how we speak on our country within the country. Like, look at how things look outside of the country. You watch the Australian news broadcast where their cameraman got punched in the face when Trump was clearing out Lafayette Square. We look like we look like a failed nation state, and it's been that way for Black people. So it's kind of like, it's not a new thing for us, but it seems like some people are waking up to the reality that this is happening. We're in a kind of a spiral. Mm-hmm. But sorry.
No, I was just going to say that, and again, it comes back to educating, because in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from. And in order for real change to happen in this country, it's going to have to start with people educating themselves and wanting to change how we do things, change policies, change who's in office. And that's why one of the things is, like, Will and I, we made a point, and I was kind of glad when they did it the way they did it this year, even with the pandemic. Like, instead of us going to the voting polls, they actually mailed out our ballots. So Will and I actually had a chance to sit down, look at all the candidates. We actually took the time to research and look at who was running, what their standing was, what their policies was, what they believed in, what their platform was. Like, we took the time to research. And I think if you want real change, you need to research and go out there and vote. And I know that a lot of people don't want to do it, or they feel like their vote doesn't matter. But especially Black Americans, we have got to get out and vote, because people died. Our people literally died for you to have the right to vote. So if you want real change, go out there and protest, but then also go to the polls. Make sure you are voting in the primaries. Make sure you are voting in the general election. Make sure, not even the general election, but make sure you are voting for your local elections, because it starts at the bottom.
That's what I was going to say, because people get on the presidents for he did this, Trump's doing this for the people, or not doing this for the people. Obama's doing this for the people, or not doing this for the people. And what people are failing to realize, the elections where the stuff is really, where business is really being taken care of, is not with your executive branch. It's with your legislative branch. Executive
Right.
branch is great, and they have their purpose, and they do help get things and push things along. But the problem is people aren't taking the same time out to make sure that the legislative branch, when those elections come around in those off years, that they're voting for the laws, that we're voting for the people, those legislative people, they're you're just falling asleep on that end in general. And what ends up happening is, yeah, you voted for the president. Great. You got Obama in there. I'm happy about that. I'm a black guy. He's black. That's great. But then all the other things fall through the cracks. You don't vote for those same people. You don't hold that same standard. You forget all about those votes and think Obama can do it all by himself. Like there isn't a Senate, like there isn't Congress, like there isn't a legislative
city council.
There's a whole branch of the legislative branch which actually makes the laws. Executives aren't tasked with making these laws. They're signing off on them. And so yeah, you want to get people in there that you trust that are going to have your interest. But if you're not doing the same thing with the legislative, then all the laws that are getting passed and pushed through to the executive for him to sign off on, how are those things going to help you? They're not going to help you.
Right.
You're missing out on half of what's happening.
And that's why too, like I encourage people to pay really attention to like who's sitting on the city council. Even when it comes to the boards of education, who's sitting on your boards for your children that has a say in what children are being taught and what the curriculum is like. Like you got to pay attention. Like it's not just about the president. And I know that's the time when everybody wants to vote is for president, but you have city council leaders, you have mayors that their decisions, they affect you more than what the president is doing sometimes. And that you'll see more change. Yeah, most of the time you'll see more change at the mayor's office and at the governor's office, at the city council office before you'll see the change trickle down from the president. So
if we pay more attention to the local elections, pay more attention to the legislative branch and what they're doing and what they're have going on and who are voting for in that department, I would hope, and I don't know if this would be the case, you would see some type of difference in who is running for the presidency and available for the presidency, because we've changed things on a lower level where a person like Trump doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you can't, but unfortunately for too many people, he made sense. And that's because there's a lot of people with no money who think that this is their way of getting fixed. And I mean, if you look at it, it didn't fix anything for those people either who voted Trump in. I would like to talk to somebody who is happy with Trump and like, yeah, I got everything I wanted from Trump. I guarantee you it's not the poor people who voted him in.
No, it's going to be the evangelical Christians that wanted a judge and or two judges really in the Supreme Court and forsaked everything else.
Just to get that.
So yeah, no, I agree. At local elections, like we're talking about defunding the police. That's not the president. That's not going to be in going to a bill in the House of Representatives. That's something that your mayor is going to do,
right?
And your city council or your county executive. So that's definitely important. I understand that there's a certain amount of privilege to talk about. Oh, we need to be paying attention when people are working two jobs, trying to get by. Like the black man, average black person's wealth is like at 11,000. Well, white people's is like whatever it is. I can't quote it off the top of my head. So that affords you more time to do things like that, like being at the meetings, like being at the council meetings and things of that nature to keep them accountable. So there is a certain amount of privilege that's afforded to certain people to be able to do that. And that's why a lot of older people get, they're in the election, they're doing election boards and stuff like that. But we're still trying to eat.
No, that is true. That is true because and one thing and the reason why I say and because honestly, when we got our ballots, and we were looking at the candidates, I looked at Will and I was like, do you know who any of these people are? And Will and I, we didn't know. I was like, who are these people? Like the only people that I knew about or known about was who was running for mayor of Baltimore. And that was because I see it every day on the TV. Like I don't even live in Baltimore, so I can't even vote for the mayor of Baltimore. But it's like I hadn't really seen any of these people campaign. And I don't know if that's really because of they weren't doing like TV or because of the pandemic. But and that's why I made a point to do my research, because I'm just not going to vote just to vote. Like, so even if I can't go to the council meetings, which I haven't gone to any council meetings, but again, if I can at least look up who these people are and look at their platforms and kind of look at their record, then I can make some sort of an informed decision. Because yeah, you're right. Because if you got people that are, working two and three jobs, trying to put food on the table for their kids, like, I feel like if anything, if you can, try to do your research and go out there and vote. If that means that, you have to go out to the library and use a library computer to do some research, or just even talking to people, even just trying to find out, okay, who can I call to talk to? Let me talk to this person and see what this person is all about. But on the flip side of that, the one thing, because of, the local government recently, just the other day or yesterday, Breonna Taylor, the woman, 26-year-old woman who was killed in Kentucky, they actually just passed a law. This was local, where they passed a law. Now they don't have the no-knock warrant anymore. So that is that's just an example of some of the things that can change at a local level, where you can change the way that police are doing certain things. And so we need more of those laws and more of the right people in office to make those changes. And trying to figure out, like, and making it okay for people to say that, hey, I can speak out against cops. Like, because I think I was seeing something about how, I guess, cops are afraid. It's like, oh, I'm being filmed, but if I say, hey, Bob, you should stop handling that guy like that, then again, because you are being filmed, you become liable. So they just stand aside and just let whatever happen, because they don't want to give, people the leeway to say, oh, well, now you're liable because they told you to stop, but you didn't stop. But I mean, I just feel like one of the reasons why I wanted to do this conversation is because I just felt like I wanted to at least have a way and use my platform to kind of voice my opinions and voice my concerns and talk about what is going on in today, and trying to think about solutions to, well, how can we rectify the problem, or try to make some changes where, that's going to be better for Black Americans and people of color, and trying to really educate people, because you guys know me, I'm all about education. So it comes from education. And whether it's that, if you don't know the resources, find those resources. I know that people have been putting out resources galore on social media now. So you're right, Brian, people do not have an excuse. They do not have an excuse to try to find, well, what can they do to make things better? You can visit museums if you want to learn the history and try to figure out, like, well, how did we get to the point where we are today? Like, that is nothing new. Like, people want to act like, oh, I thought racism was gone. This is not the 1960s. Slavery was, over 200 years ago. It's still very prevalent today. And like, I wanted people to understand that. So what do you think are some other solutions, other than like the policy changing and education? What are some other things that you think that can happen or need to happen? Something that could happen like in the next few months that could happen, that could kind of like help things along?
What can help things? We vote with our money. We're doing, like, there's things going into action, like on Juneteenth or whatever. and I fully support that being a more getting more and more a national attention, like being more of a national holiday for Black people at least.
It needs to be a federal holiday, just like MLK, just like Thanksgiving. It needs to be a federal holiday.
Yeah, and it's something that I just found out about maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. But in Maryland, they didn't free their slaves until November 1st, and then in DC they were out. There's a whole Emancipation Day, so they were out that's about around the same time that Lincoln even made the speech. So or before that. So. Juneteenth is a new concept, but I fully support it. I fully support it being a national holiday that Black people galvanize around and do whatever, like support Black business, cook out, do fireworks, whatever you want to do, and to show solidarity. Things like that, like they need to end qualifying immunity. I don't know I don't know if that's a national a policy needs to happen in a bill, or that's something that can go state by state. But as long as qualifying immunity is there, and that I believe the man's name was Thorne that brought this case to the Supreme Court, and he won technically, but they use it against. But the police are in their defenses, they use it as a some of how it's written by the Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist. It allows police to get off because they're using the flash, the moment, like the half a second before they shoot, or before they choke somebody out, or before they knee somebody to death, as some type of escape clause, like a get out of jail free clause. That needs to stop. That needs to end. So before we even talk about justice, because like right now I'm looking at it like the people that murdered Breonna Taylor, they might never see a courtroom, because they were under their law, like no warrant. They had a no not warrant. Actually, I've heard differing stories of whether or not it was the wrong address, the right address. From what I understood, it's the right address, but it was they didn't have any criminal activity going in that house, so it's probably mistaken. But they're gonna hide behind that warrant, and like until we get some type of accountability and we destroy police unions, that's the other thing. We need to dismantle police unions. They're not unions. Like we should be all good for unions, but that is not a union. That is a political super PAC.
Yeah, somebody made and
it needs to be destroyed.
A point. They realize like when you're in a private business, and and just to protect employees, you unionize. That makes sense. But when you unionize the police, your government, you're unionizing against yourself. That doesn't make sense. So they like it's not even it shouldn't be allowed in the first place. There's a conflict of interest just being that there's a union and you're already a part of
it. Hey, I'm about to go inside, so I'm gonna stop the video and mute myself.
Here I am.
Okay.
Stop. All right. Okay. But I was just saying that the idea of having a union, the police union, and being unionized shouldn't be allowed just based on other aspects of law. It's a conflict of interest, and it allows for things that shouldn't exist, which like the different ways that the police are able to one thing that specifically the police can do is they don't make but a certain amount of money, but when they go to retire, they make whatever they made in their last year. So these people go and they'll do all this overtime and inflate their number, their salary number. So somebody who's making 70 can make 140, and now when they retire, that was there last year, and so the police have to give them 140.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of different measures that are obvious when you understand what unions do for you, were placed in by unions. But that doesn't help the American people. This is a government agency. This is funded by the government. This is supposed to be keeping people safe and whatnot. And that doesn't aid in that. That does help that guy to make 140,000 a year. That's great. But that also allows for people to be in a to how do I want to say, it allows them to do things as police. It incentivizes them to do things that they should not be doing. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of things, like i.e. killing unarmed black men, but like just in general, they're doing things and they're incentivized to do certain things that we shouldn't be incentivizing our police force to do. There's a lot of what would exist in policing. Policing was specifically birthed out of the concept of chasing down black men who were slaves and trying to get away, and that's what the police system is birthed out of. There are too many relics to what it used to be that allow it to still function in what it is now. Even at the point in juncture that they created the police, many white supremacists joined it, the KKK and things of that nature infiltrated the police system at its onset.
Yeah, I think that one thing that I do want to acknowledge is that not all police is bad.
Well, yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
I get that. That is obvious. But I think part of the problem is that for a lot of Black people, they will not call the police now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going to be, because I know there have been instances where even there was a case where the guy had called the police to do a wellness check, and the wellness check that they did it on the person, they ended up shooting the person that they were doing the wellness check for. I was like, and then like the guy who called it, he was really just trying to get the police to check on this man, and he was a Black man, and they shot him, and I was like, so now we can't even rely on the police to do wellness checks. Like that's how some people feel.
And that goes to the defunding of the police. There are some good police, and the thing that a lot of people fail to understand is that if the few or many, however many good police fail to put into check the police who are obviously bad police, there isn't really any good police. You can say you personally are a good policeman, but if you see something happening that should not be happening and you did nothing to stop it, you not really, like, how good of a police are you, Mr. They're good police? I don't know. But I do know individuals who are police officers, and I know those people as individuals to be good men. And I would hope when they have a chance on an opportunity to stop things that shouldn't be happening, that's what they're doing. And honestly, the people I'm talking about, I believe would do that. The issue is there are entirely too many people who are too scared, especially because in the system that they exist in, the police system is frowning upon these people policing themselves and making sure that they don't that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So when somebody negative is doing something they shouldn't be doing, there's nobody to stop them. You know what I'm saying, internally. But then on top of that, the police are being asked to do a lot of things that don't make sense for us to ask the police to do, especially not with their track record in general of killing Black men. That's a social issue, and we should have somebody we can call for that. The police shouldn't be that entity.
Well, I think it's interesting that you can call the police to do, wellness checks, because when I think of doing like a wellness check, I'm like, shouldn't you call in like a social worker or a therapist, someone who is trained to handle that? Because I saw, and this was just mind-boggling. I saw a picture on Facebook that said, it was a sign on the front lawn. It was a sign that's saying, "Hey, there is a person here who is autistic. They are nonverbal. They do not understand commands. So do not shoot. Oh, and also they are Black."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, now, how many police officers do you know how to de-escalate someone with autism? Now, I've worked with people with autism, and I've seen at both ends of the spectrum. It is very hard to control someone, and these were children that I was working with. It's very hard to control someone who is nonverbal
Yeah.
and who doesn't take to commands. So for a police officer, if they're not trained in that, they're going to think, especially like a big Black man, they're going to think that, oh, he's a threat, I got to shoot him. When all he was is that the man is autistic, and he doesn't understand, he doesn't know what's going on. But because the officer is not trained to handle situations like that, your answer is to shoot the man dead. So that's why I was like, why are they how is it that we have a system where we can call police for a wellness check when they have no training, or, the certifications or the schoolings or
But
the degrees that it takes to know how to deal with people with mental illness and
the
with,
main reason
different things.
and the main reason we have that is happening, at least a reason why I believe that's happening, is because we have inflated the funding of police to a ridiculous level, because the feeling was, oh, there's crime in these neighborhoods. We need to go send more police. We need to police them more, which doesn't help in any of the situations. They have statistics to prove that doesn't those correlations, that they're not there. That's not helpful. There's way more helpful things you can do in those areas where people have been trying to attack the problem of funding the police. If you took those same funds and stopped funding the police to this ridiculous measure, you can put those funds into things like building up the neighborhood, building community centers, building parks, putting money into people who are trained to deal with the common person who has different issues, because there are a lot of people. There are people who are bipolar. There are people with autism. There are many different types of people. And what do we do? We just going to attack this issue, which is a poverty issue, with a policing by policing impoverished people more. Doesn't make any sense. A lot of the crime exists because they funded the crime. The people in power, the CIA, it's on record, was pumping crack into the Black areas to make money or whatever. I forget the outcome, what they were trying to accumulate outside of just destroying our neighborhoods. But they're like, Black people don't have the as a whole don't have the influence enough to bring in the money and drugs, the amount of money and drugs that have infiltrated our neighborhoods. It's so you ended up funding the problem by handing us a bunch of guns and a bunch of drugs, and then saying that these people are problematic, and now we're going to send police at these people to fix the problem. And you end up with what you have now. You have a bunch of militarized police that there are entirely too many of. They're funding them this way because they say they believe the problem is with the people there and not with the society that they built around those people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the training and putting more funds, because I mean, even if you look at some of, the programs that are available, because I know I have friends who are social workers, and I know my dad's a social worker. Like, I know some of the pay that these people get.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, you're putting all of it, and even with, even with the officers, like, not even if you're a detective or a sergeant, like even officers in some parts of the country, they're not making as much money. But
no,
I'm talking about,
which causes two problems. It you make some money, you make decent amount of money that makes worthwhile for you to show up, but it's not enough money to weed out or entice people who are going to be better educated, people who have a better understanding of the world around them. If you have a certain amount of intelligence and a certain amount of grip on what's going on around you in the world, you're probably not going to go be a police officer. You're not going to endanger your life. You're not going to, the money is not going to be enough money. I'm intelligent. I have a good grasp on society and the things around the world. What am I going to become? I'm not going to become a police officer. There's a lot of other things in the world that I can go be at these. So you're paying people just enough money to make a living, but not enough money to weed out or to be able to weed out people or entice people to come in actually that are going to be better suited for what you want them to do. You need better educated people. You need people who are smart. You need people who can tackle problems well and they're problem solvers, not just I'm going to knock somebody in the head. But you're not doing that. You're giving them this amount of money, and then so that causes the problem where you're not getting the kind of people, the kind of the kind of people with the behavior and thought processes that you want aren't going to incentivize to come there. That's what the pay level is. They're going to go and do something else that makes more money, and so you have that problem. And now the people who are left over that you are accumulating, they're not as smart. They're not every cop. I'm saying that you're getting a bunch of people who aren't. There are obviously smart cops, but you're getting people. You're also attracting people who can't do anything else. That you're attracting some of these people who aren't as smart. They're not as well educated. They're not as well able to cope and whatnot. So what ends up happening? You now have got these people on, and now we took the cops and we incentivized, because you're only getting paid this much to do all this overtime. So now you don't just attract some people. So you have some good cops in there who are smart and intelligent and do things a certain way, but you've got a whole bunch of people who aren't. And what do they? And everybody and all of them have been incentivized by, we only make this amount to endanger our lives. I need to make more money for my family. What do? I'm gonna work overtime, which means, yeah, you're gonna have the nice, good, smart cop working overtime, but you got a whole bunch more bad cops. Like I said, was seeing this as a way to make money and doing overtime, doing other little things that cops do to generate money that is built into the system.
And I think it's about power, because even when I was talking about, doing wellness checks, one thing that I heard that I was wondering, I wonder if some districts do this, but when people want to do a wellness check, do they do, like, when the police come out, do they bring like a therapist or a social worker with them? Because in my mind, if it's a wellness check, then, and this is just in my mind, I don't know how different or what it could turn into, but I'm thinking that it's not a situation that could escalate into the need of deadly force.
Which means you shouldn't send somebody out there with a gun.
With guns, right. So I'm saying that, yes, you take if they're calling for a wellness check, your first thing should be, you should have a therapist or a social worker on speed dial saying, hey, we have a wellness check. We need you to meet us at such and such location, and we're only there to protect you. Like, just in case. Like, I can understand that, but you shouldn't send police because that's who they're supposed to send out, because the police don't have that training to deal with someone who might be autistic or bipolar, or just wanting to check on So I just wanted to check on someone like you, because when you're doing a wellness check, you are checking on their well-being as a person. You are checking on their mental state. You're not going there to arrest, or you know what I'm saying? Like, the police are there to arrest people,
Well,
yes, to
that
protect, but you're not going there to like
goes
shoot somebody down.
That goes to the point of defunding them. So people hear defunding and think we're going to get rid of all police, although that's on the table as well. People are mentioning to get rid of police, but the main reason they're saying get rid of police,
can happen though.
That would have to happen.
You need some sort of order. Like, that's just the way society is. You need some sort of law and order.
But a lot of people will say the size of the country, but if you just think at a macro level, just a small level of each individual city and state and town doing this within themselves, you could definitely, well, I believe you could do things without the police as we know it today, as we have it right now. But that goes to a lot to the point of the defunding, because the defunding means not simply get rid of police. It doesn't simply mean we're going to reduce the amount of police. It means we're going to reduce the amount of police. We're going to demilitarize them. We're going to take that money away. That's a huge section of that money. We're going to take that now and push that into other things that are targeted to solve the problems that we're talking about. So the issue is, if you have a set of people that you can call that aren't a bunch of men with guns and tactical gear to come out to your house or come out to the neighbors, like the neighbor is, I'm not sure about this neighbor, I'm worried about this neighbor, I'm worried about their mental health, I'm worried about whatever it is you think, can you do a check on them? The person who shows up is a person without a gun. The person who shows up is a person who is just some educated person with some therapy techniques, some things to help you. Maybe this make sure this person's healthy. This person's living conditions don't look that great, or their mental state doesn't look that great, and then this is what we can do around this for this person to help them out.
Because I would imagine, because even with myself, because I'm not around police officers that much, like even when I do see a police, like if I'm at the store and I see a police officer like in the grocery line and stuff, and I see that he has his gun on him, it intimidates me, or it puts me like, it puts me on edge. So, and this is speaking as a person who doesn't, who I don't have any mental health issues. So it's like, how would somebody feel if they are bipolar, or if someone has autism or whatever other mental health issues? Like, how does that make them feel if they're already having an episode, and you're afraid that they're going to hurt you or themselves, and you call the police, and then they see the police and see these people that have guns and tasers and spray? To me, I would think that would make the person even worse. So that's why I'm saying, like, instead of, yes, send out the police to protect the therapist or the social worker, but send somebody else other than police who is trained to kind of help de-escalate the situation.
I don't even think you need to send the police. Men with guns on them should be called when you are worried about men with guns. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. We're calling police on who? A guy who is selling loose cigarettes? That doesn't sound like a police issue where you need to send a man with a gun. You have a man with a gun patrolling and pulling up on a young man in a gray hoodie with Skittles in his pocket. Doesn't sound like a situation with a gun, and he wasn't even police. You have a man with a situation where we think there might be counterfeit money. Doesn't matter whether there is or not. Even if there was counterfeit money, do you need a gun for that person who has a piece of paper in his hand? You really don't. So I understand. So if you so one person put it on a podcast, a guy, comedian named Andrew Schultz, who says a lot of wild stuff, but he also does he's satire, so he says a lot of crazy stuff, but he's getting to a greater point. And the point he made is that saying defunding, because yes, there's the people who think we should get rid of police altogether, and I'm not adverse to that. That would have to be done in a very specific manner, in a manner gradually, where we find solutions for the people who are out there with guns, who we want to stop. There are men running around the streets with a gun. You need to stop those men from running around the streets with guns who aren't doing anything positive with those weapons. Yes, you would need somebody like a police officer to go get that guy. But in most of these situations, we have people dying in situations when an unarmed man is dying. It's probably because the man who's armed is going after somebody who's not even in a situation where you need to be worried about a gun. How many people are selling loose cigarettes that are carrying around guns? If I don't have money, I'm not wasting money on a gun. If I'm trying to sell loose cigarettes, I'm not, obviously, you see what I'm saying? I'm not, nobody sells enough loose cigarettes to buy guns. Guns cost a lot, especially on the street. That's not what's happening. So if a person who's counterfeiting money isn't usually a guy running around with a bunch of weapons on him. He's usually running around with a bunch of things that are indicative of somebody who counterfeits. You see what I'm saying? So
and I think what's interesting.
And so, anyways, I just want to say what he said. He said we should start, she said we need to rebrand the defunding, and perhaps call it something else. And his idea was specializing the police, whatever that, which is not super inaccurate, but there needs to be a specialization of our way of coming against problems of people who are doing something illegal. This one size fits all of sending a man with a gun into a situation that does not necessarily that most likely doesn't need a gun doesn't make sense. These cops have become a catch-all, so that we're sending them in situations where they need guns, sure, but we're also sending them in situations where we don't need guns. We're sending them in situations where is mental health checks. You see what I'm saying? Like, we're sending. We've become too broad with what we want these guys to accomplish. It doesn't make sense. If you don't want to get rid of police altogether, and having a set of men with guns who are called in when things escalate to a level that you don't want it to, understandable. Those guys sit on call. They sit at home, or like firemen. They all sit there for a time span on shifts or whatever. And when we need you, we call you. Until then, we call somebody else who's more. If it's a mental health issue, we call for that. If it's a social worker issue, we call somebody about that. And if we take the funding out of police, so you don't need so many police, then what would happen is you could fund some of these other ways of tackling these problems, and perhaps have a lot less dead unarmed black men and other people, because this affects black men, and we're talking about how it affects our community, because it affects our community disproportionately. We're not talking about it because it doesn't affect it affects everybody. It's just a lot of people think, well, we're talking about it because of the black issue. Yeah, because it's disproportionate. But it helps everybody to tackle the police problem.
Yeah. Because I feel like with police brutality,
people who are dying unnecessarily,
or even not even dying, but the way that police have handled people. Like I've seen stories of when police are like throwing old women out of their own houses and arresting old women. Like, they're old women. Like, how are they a threat? Why do you feel like you need to handcuff them and hurt them? They are old women. What are they going to do to you? Same thing with children. You are handcuffing children. Like, why? They're 8. Why you feel like you
I've seen somebody put a child in, it wasn't exactly a chokehold, it was some kind of maneuver and had his arms pinned behind his back. The boy was all of 12 or 13. He wasn't a danger to no grown man. He was, was a kid. He was small.
Yeah.
And you got two cops and somebody was videotaping and trying to say, yo, this is wrong. Stop doing that to the boys. Stop doing that in this video. And I don't know what the kid had done. The kid was in the video. I will admit, the kid was boisterous. You might say he was disrespectful to the cops. Disrespect doesn't mean you get to beat somebody up.
Right. And I think too, sometimes people
issue, because if two human beings have a domestic issue where we are arguing of somebody, does not mean I get to beat somebody up because I disagree with them or because they are disrespectful. So now I automatically get to punch you in the face just because you said, yo, your shirt is ugly. That's not, you know what I'm saying? Some little 12-year-old is calling you a pig, and you're a police officer, sure. You might not appreciate that comment, calling you a pig. I got it. Cool. You're a cop. That's a derogatory thing of calling police. I'm not crying for you, but I do get that. You might be upset about that. You don't get to grip the kid up because of some disrespectful comment. That's not helping anybody. Or it's definitely not helping, you know what I'm saying, you look any better, because now you look like exactly what we're saying. You're abusing your power.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you have the authority and the power is not to hit knuckleheads who has said something ignorant to you. It's not to grab up people who are, yes, doing something that might be criminal, but it's not endangering anybody's life. The goal of you having a gun specifically is to keep you safe from other people who have guns, because sometimes criminals have guns. And if the criminal is a criminal who is robbing people at gunpoint, then I expect the person with a gun to show up to stop him. If the person is passing along a piece of paper and telling you that this piece of paper is money, I don't expect you to show up and choke him out, hit him, shoot him, and all the things that have happened, which is the reason for this little podcast, is like that's not helpful to anybody. It's not contributing to making things beneficial, and this is why people are calling for the defunding, and I think appropriately calling for the defunding of police. It definitely, if nothing else, need to be demilitarized. There's no reason why they should have some of the weapons and some of the gear and artillery that they have. I don't understand what most of the time it's sitting around collecting dust doing that. You don't usually need that amount of stuff. If you did, we have National Guard. We have other avenues. We don't need our day-to-day police who are supposed to be serving the community, walking around with guns. It doesn't make me feel safe.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that like you're kind of laying out what, like, in the situations where someone was shot, where a Black person was choked out and stuff, is interesting, because I think I heard somebody say this on Facebook. Okay, if we take all of these incidences, if we take it and we say that none of these people were Black, say all these people were white people, how do you think people will respond?
These police are out of control.
Yeah, they're saying they're out of control, but I think on the flip side of that, they would also say that, this would probably never happen.
But the situation wouldn't have happened first. I mean, there are probably a few instances. There are, I'm sure, because everything exists in this world. As if you could think of it, it exists. I'm sure it's happened, but it's definitely not happened on the scale that it's happened to Black people. It's disproportionate, and that's really one of the major problems. Is that it's not fair if you are 14% of the population and let's include some of the Hispanics, because the Hispanic people a lot of times are joined with our community, but Black and brown community. What ends up happening, because a lot of them live in areas we live in. These people who are Black and brown, who now, if you add their community, what that percentage is now, sort of 20 something. The amount of people that are getting harmed is at a way higher rate than the white people getting harmed. If it was the same rate, I don't think it would cause a lot of stir. But when you see the population of Black people in jails is at 30-something%, but yet we only make up 14% of the population. Why is the population of the prison so high? Black people are convicted at a much higher rate, even though there are more white people committing crimes. Statistically, there's a larger number of white people and a larger number of white people committing crimes, but there isn't a larger amount of white people in jail or prison. There isn't a larger amount. The percentage of them getting harmed isn't higher. Do you see what I'm saying? So something is not matching up.
But again, I think even with us talking about police brutality, there are things that need to change in terms of policy from the top down. I think that in terms of for people to understand why understand why people are protesting, why are we, why we're saying Black Lives Matter, why are we pushing for people to support Black-owned businesses, why we are doing all of this, why does ByrdOwl Consulting even exist? Because at the end of the day, in order for change to happen, people need to educate themselves. People need to be open to wanting to learn, wanting to understand people's differences. Like, not trying to say all this stuff about, oh, I don't see color. No, you need to see the color. You need to see and embrace the differences of people, different cultures, different backgrounds. Embrace those people. Don't say that you don't see color. Because when you say that you don't see color, you are also still part of the problem. Because when you say that you don't see color, then you are saying that our experiences, the problems of Black and brown people, of people of color, do not exist. Exactly. When they do, you can't just say that, oh, I don't see color. And that's the reason why I want to have this talk today, because I wanted to get perspective from you, Will, and from your brother, Brian, and just to get to help people kind of understand like why we're doing what we're doing, why we're posting what we're posting, and what can you do to continue. And again, some of the things that we talked about before is to read up about anti-racism, find different resources. I will continue to blog about different ways that you can find out more resources, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, whether it's letting you know some museums that you can visit. We have a lot of great Black museums out in this country. So, try to do your research. I know that we are in a pandemic right now and a lot of places are closed, but a lot of museums, they have online resources. And we have the internet, we have social media. You have the information at your fingertips. You just have to make the point to do what it is in order to educate yourself. And that's part of the reason why I have this podcast as well. But I wanted to make this kind of a special episode because of what is everything going on. I want to address what was going on. And so what's going to happen next is hopefully my plan is to actually bring back Bird's Eye View for a second season. And we're going to have different guest speakers, and hopefully the first episode will probably drop sometime in August. So I'm actually working now on recording and trying to figure out some more topics and really make it more engaging for you guys. Also, if you have not had a chance, please check out my social media. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Just type in ByrdOwl Consulting and I will pop up. Actually, today I launched my my merch website where you can find different t-shirts and book bags and mugs and things like that. And so I have one shirt on called Pretty Black and Educated. This shirt was actually designed by Will Davidson, who is a graphic designer.
Hey, I know that guy.
Yeah, who actually designed the t-shirt. But I have other things on the website as well. So if you want to support the podcast, you want to support me and my business, then feel free to head over to my website and purchase something. I also wanted to thank Will Davidson for being on the podcast today, and tell people where they can find you and some of your work.
Oh, you can most easily get to me on Instagram. It's at King Power 29, and also Designed by Willpower. That's Design X Willpower. My business page. Both of those should have nice, easy, accessible links to take you to my website, or take you to clothing site where I do have certain things on sale, like this little guy right here, just a little things. But I have other stuff on there available to purchase if you want to support Black business, which I hope you do.
And because I think, and I think Brian had to cut out, but if for Brian, him and his podcast on the Ride Up, he does co-host that with his friend T, and they like to talk about sports, and they also talk about things that pertain to Black culture. So feel free to check them out. You can also find them on Instagram and Facebook at On the Ride Up. So I highly recommend that podcast as well. So that's going to be it for today. And you can always, if you have any topics that you want me to talk about, or questions or comments, you can always email me at ByrdOwlconsulting@gmail.com. And you can also find me on my website. You can look at my blog. So I'm going to be posting more blog posts there. You can, again, find me on social media. So feel free to like and follow and share this podcast. Share this on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube page, and I will hopefully see you guys next time. So thank you.